one topic that kind of fascinates me is this idea of like functionality versus ease of use. And since we have several platforms here, like how do you guys think about that exchange, right? It's like when you want to build super deep functionalities, there's just going to be a deeper learning curve. And then if you're doing simpler things, it's going to be much easier to bring to market. But like, I'd love to hear like kind of how you guys think of that specifically, sort of directed towards Adalo, Tapcart, and Bubble, and how I guess you see that taking place within, I guess everyone's trying to make the barrier to entry lower. But at the same time, it seems like I see companies like Bubble and Adalo where they're like, it's pretty clear that you guys are trying to go like the deepest you can, right? Like trying to get like functionalities that are like kind of breaking boundaries. So where does that balance lie within these companies?
So, I mean, first I'd say, Bubble's kind of core principle is flexibility and freedom above everything. And so we really want to position ourselves as a visual programming language where you can do anything that you want to by stringing together all these things. So with that in mind, I think when this conversation comes up, when this topic comes up, the average user doesn't know what's really hard or what's really easy. They just have in their mind what they want to accomplish, right? What their goal is, a feature that they want to build, a business case that they want to test out. So I try not to think about it in terms of, oh, well, this is like advanced functionality or this is getting really into the weeds. Try to think about it in more terms of, look, the end user is not going to know like what's technically hard for us to build or what is like too complicated. So we try to treat everything kind of on the same playing field. And one of the ways to kind of make things that are very buried or deep easier to surface is all about context, right? So if someone is going down a certain path, then options open up as they go down that path rather than just seeing everything at once and you get option paralysis. So that's been one area of focus is how do you contextually provide or push the user in the right direction depending on what they're doing. So one example of that in Bubble is we typecast different things. So if someone wants to search for a list of products, they specify, I'm going to be talking about products, right? I'm focusing on products right now. And then I'm going to search for products. And then you can layer on a bunch of constraints and filters and sorting. But at the end, it has to kind of sum up to a list of products. And if it doesn't, if you made an error along the way, then it'll tell you and you can kind of correct it as you go. So you can end up building what would be a very, very complex, SQL query for those who are technical in just kind of plain English, kind of getting guided along the way. And with those checks in place, it's like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't that hard, right? Like, okay, that makes sense. So I think that's one of the things that we really try to focus on is remembering that at the end of the day, the user is not going to know and shouldn't have to care whether this is complicated or not. It should be something that they're able to access regardless.
Love it. And I'd love to hear from Adalo as well, because I know that you have recently sort of, released the components marketplace. You're doing a lot of kind of deeper work to get access to some of those deeper functionalities. How do you look at this? Is it kind of similar to what Nick was mentioning?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities. And, I was having a conversation with one of our co-founders the other day so because I'm in education and I'm going to be teaching how to use the platform, what is our approach going to be? And my background is in product and software engineering. And so I immediately, when I start like thinking about building, I immediately start thinking about the database, right? Like, how are we going to structure all of this? Because then I'm going to put a UI on top of it. Well, with typically, we call them makers, but people who come to our platform, if they don't have a background, databases are actually like a scary thing for them. They're really unsure of what it is, how to structure it. So we are kind of taking a different approach of saying like, how can we marry concepts of what we're teaching to things they already know? So they understand what a UI is because they're interacting with it constantly. So we're taking that approach, and we've talked with some people, and I've tried this out on some different opportunities that I've had for teaching, and it's worked really well. And I think that there is probably a constraint, with like how complicated do you want to make the platform versus how easy is it going to be to use? And I think that at some point you have to realize there's a learning curve for everything. It's going to require someone to dig in and learn. But the point is how quickly can we get them from A to Z and on their way so that they're not investing so much time learning and realizing, oh, this isn't actually going to work for us. But I'm not in product, so I don't know what their constraints are. But I do know from an education standpoint, like it's very important that it is simple to use and intuitive. And I definitely think that we've hit the nail on the head with that.
Awesome. I would agree. Tara?
Yeah, I was just going to share that we spend a lot of time thinking about this as an education company because we work with a lot of the platforms that you guys are building here too. One of the things that we've done that's really made a difference, because a lot of the folks that we work with feel sometimes overwhelmed by like the amount of flexibility that they can have. And also I often will notice that like when you have a lot of flexibility, you end up thinking about a bunch of new things that were completely not part of the original app scope at all. And like really like no customer is going to pay any more money for them. That's usually like my question that I ask people, like, how much more money are your customers going to give you if you add this feature? And if it's like not that much, then like, let's put that on the to-do list for later. But one of the things that we've done is we've built our own sort of platforms that sort of are not directly connected to, but are help with the existing tools that are out there, because we believe really strongly that like app building should be conversational, that you should ultimately be able to text a phone number, it asks you questions, and it builds the app for you. And so what we do at Apps Without Code is we have a series of questions that we ask. And as we've built this out, the question logic has gotten more and more complex and robust, but really it asks you questions and it prototypes and puts together your app and gives you instructions of what to do next based on the answers to those questions. And we find that that kind of experience works really well for beginners, where like who have like no idea what a good login screen looks like you don't even know where to begin and where to start. And what you build is just like, oh wait, no, that's not quite how logins even work, right? So to overcome some of that and to overcome some of the things, Christian, you were talking about around like functionality versus ease of use and that balance, there's a lot of decisions that we find that a lot of tools out there that you can make. But some people have absolutely no interest in making those decisions or like even learning how the database should get structured. They just want it to be structured. And so we found that like some conversational experiences make a big difference there. And so that's really what we're playing around with at Apps Without Code.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I mean, we're also sort of an institute for non-technical people. So we also run a program. And we've also found that like absolutely like one thing is like product. The other thing is everything else that makes a successful business. And so that's what attracted me to NoCode, was specifically that like, hey, when you launch something, it doesn't have to be a complex build to test the market. And then after that, yeah, getting really close to customers so that they'll literally dictate to you what it is that they want and are willing to pay for. And that's where like, we also really like have an emphasis on like, how can we break down and teach enough of a certain platform that's going to be interesting for them. But I also loved what Lacey said in terms of like, you break down the concepts but connect them to things that they understand, right? Like if you talk about like middleware and logic, kind of like Excel, like people do use Excel. They know how to do like, if I do this, then I want, if I hover over this button, I want it to, I get that, like they understand the mechanics, but you have to connect it to specific points that they can leash on to. But no, I think that's ultimately very interesting. Sina, I'd love to hear your thoughts here, because you guys have like really focused in on like ease of use, right? Like that essentially is like a huge focus for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the constant battle when it comes to building stuff like this. You have customers who always want certain features, certain customizations, and that really comes with the territory. So our approach is really the approach that Apple and many other software companies use. 1,000 no's for every yes. Maybe for us, it's like 5 no's for every yes, but it's a constant battle with our sales team, customer support team, with our customers, et cetera. How do we keep them happy, but how do we not spend too much time veering into certain customizations they want, certain one-off features that might not be platform-wide? And we really look at it, as I mentioned, Apple does this very well. Shopify does this very well. Shopify, to be super honest, like there's a lot of features and functionalities that other e-commerce platforms have that they simply don't have. And the way I look at it is that's one of the reasons that Shopify is the premier e-commerce platform right now. They focus on ease of use, functionality, and not bogging you down with certain features and functionality that the masses aren't going to use. So I'm sure Shopify is very much 1,000 no's for every yes. So is Apple. And I think we'll eventually get big enough so we can do that too.